Well, tell us a little bit, for the camera about your background, and again, repeat a little bit of that you grew up in Mason City and such.
Sure. I grew up in Mason City. My uncle Otto Lindstrom ran blacksmith shop down by KIMT. And then my grandfather, Ed Colby, opened up Colby Welding in 1933. That was located kind of by the fire station, just to the south, 2 blocks. And in March of 1956, when he was welding on a tanker truck, that exploded. Then my father, Jack Colby, built the first steel door down at Curry's Manufacturing along with his brother Ed and Don Picken. My dad worked at Curry's for 43 years. And yeah, I'm born and raised here, went through the Mason City school systems, and love my hometown.
Well, let's get into it a little bit. One of the big issues in North Iowa this year has been Governor Grandstadt's plan that's in effect now to privatize the Medicaid program, and which was run by the state. Now it's been privatized, and what are your views on that? There's a lot of controversy about that at the time.
Sure. I have not been privy to be down at the State House to get all the information that current sitting state representatives have, but I do try to do my due diligence. And a couple things that I do know for facts are that if we kept Medicaid at its current rate, it was not sustainable. It had to be changed. A lot of times people don't like change. There are problems a lot of times when you change a whole system. I will tell you, with speaking with Speaker of the House Upmeyer, for those entities, nursing homes, assisted living, healthcare providers that are still on paper, they are the ones who experience more of the problems than the entities that have switched over to electronic. Yesterday, I was fortunate to attend the 2017 Iowa Legislature Healthcare Forum at Good Shepherd. And we covered a lot of those facts there, heard a lot of good comments, but we do need to move forward with it. As I said, the other takeaway from the current Medicaid system was fraud. And that was taking a big chunk of the money. So in the past, what they did is you would turn in your bill. Actually, they would pay it first and then ask questions, and so it's the reverse. You actually have to prove the service that you're getting now, making sure it is to a legitimate entity, and what the claim is for. And I think that will help with the checks and balances and cut down on the fraud.
Anything else on that? Okay, number two. As you probably know, the Prestige pork processing plant issue was pretty emotional in Mason City. Many believe the CAFO problem, the water quality problem, are those that the state should address. Do you agree or disagree?
I think that definitely the CAFO should be at the state level. I believe that we have the DNR in place with strict regulations. You have to remember that we have the EPA and the DNR watching over that. I was blessed to go to Washington, D.C. in April and work a full day with Senator Grassley. And while I was there, he said, "Barbara, tell me about the CAFO, so what is going on back in Mason City?" And I said, well, there's some fear mongering going on, and people are afraid that they're going to pop up near a bedroom window by you or a church window. And Senator Grassley said, "Barbara, that's never going to happen. We are friends, neighbors, we go to church together. We will not do that to one another." There are strict guidelines on the water filtration that they use that comes out of the CAFOs. So I feel like the state has our backs on the CAFOs. It's not something new. It is new to a lot of people. The term popped up, it became popular over the Prestige, but CAFOs have been around for a long, long time. The water quality issue, speaking with Bill Northey, they started a water quality initiative back in 2005. I'm pretty sure that's the year. So again, the water quality issue is not something new. The farmers are really concerned. They have some programs going on right now with soil conservation making sure that we need to remember that the farmers, most of them have wells. They want to make sure that their drinking water is also safe on their farms. So I do not think that we should take money from other programs to fund the water quality problem. I think that that's something that the government needs to make sure that that is one of our quality of life that is covered, and we shouldn't penalize one group to pay for that problem.
Where does the funds come from?
Again, I'm not at the State House. I could not detail, and I really don't want to guess on where they are getting that money, but I do know that they had a bill that I think 3/8 of every cent on a certain project would be set aside for that. Now, I don't know if they have set that aside or if they've taken that and used it for something else. If they have, shame on them, if that's the money that was supposed to be used for it. But I don't have all of the facts on that. I would certainly like to get down to Des Moines to find out more.
And then backing up a little bit with the CAFOs. We've heard about the issues in some other parts of the state where these facilities were placed on someone's property but adjacent to their neighbor. So going back to Mr. Grassley's point that neighbors don't do that to each other, it's happening. So how does the state manage that? How do neighbors handle that? What do you tell them?
Well, again, I think you'd have to look at case by case if that were happening. I know the setback is 1,875 feet. And so if someone were not abiding by that, certainly they need to check that out. I think that the CAFOs, though, the filtration system that I am told is really top of the line. So it is to cut down on the smell, and hopefully they're abiding by the current regulations. Again, that's the DNR's job, is to make sure that the quality of life for someone that lives nearby is not changed just because of a CAFO. If that's the case, I think it's unfortunate, and again, we need to address case by case. Hi.
Every year the legislature has to deal with the budget, which is what you'll have to deal with if you be elected. Excuse me, and it's a case where all state departments are always seeking more money for their particular departments and that sort of thing. Are there areas, just from your observations and knowledge, there areas that you think need additional funding, and if so, do you know of other areas where maybe cutbacks could be made to help fund whatever you think needs additional funds?
Sure. I can think of one right off the top of my head. We have an epidemic. We have a heroin opioid epidemic. And I think it's really important that we bring back drug education into the school system. That's something that I've talked to the new police chief, Jeff Brinkley, about, and Sheriff Pels, and they said you're absolutely right. I went to the heroin epidemic forum at the Music Man Square 2 weeks ago. And, you know, the problem is widespread in Ohio. It's in the Quad Cities right now, and it's in Osage, Iowa, with heroin, and many people don't know that. We must get the children at a young age. Getting them at 10 and 11 is too late. We have to bring drug enforcement back into our schools. That is something that I will be adamant about, that we find some dollars. If we're going to acknowledge the problem, we have to address it. And how do we address it? We have to teach the kids the widespread.
Curious, what part of Ohio did you read about heroin?
It's central. I know it's Cleveland. My sister lives in Cincinnati. It's not as bad there, but it is to the north and the Midwest of Ohio. My daughter worked for DHS in the Quad Cities last year. We brought her back home because of the things that she has seen. It's in Clinton County, it's in the Quad Cities, and it's sweeping across to our area.
It's really
Mhm. Mhm.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
You came here for
Yeah.
lives.
Mhm. Yeah.
Then the second half of that question was what areas would you cut back to create that balance or find the funding for more drug education?
Well, I think there's always frivolous spending in any company that you look at that you can cut back. Tom and I always had to do a budget. We'd take our pie chart and do advertising. You do local events. How much do you want to donate to charities? Payroll, unexpected expenses, healthcare expenses. So I think if the state would conduct their business more like a private business has to do, and really focus on year to year, things do change. What's really important, I think that might help. I do know that in the past few years they have set aside money for some frivolous furniture, things like that, that I think should be way at the end of the list. I think our children come first, especially for the drug education, and I'm telling you, it really worked when we had it. I remember the day when my daughter came home from school. She had just started with Officer Charlie Connor, her first DARE class. And I was sitting at the table drinking a cup of coffee, and she says, "Mother, you are drinking a drug." And I said, "What?" And she says, "Caffeine is a drug." So it's instilled in them. They retain that. We just need to let them know the horrors of heroin.
Are there any circumstances in which you would support an increase in taxes?
Probably not. I think right now, Mason City, you pay 39.74% of your property tax goes to the Mason City school system. 38 point something goes to the city of Mason City, and 2% goes to NIAC. Those are just the top three. I look at that and I'm thinking, so more of our property tax goes to the school system than to run the whole city budget. That's huge to me. I'm not a believer in raising taxes on people. When I've been out door knocking, people don't have any extra money. There is a couple that lives up by the cement plant, and I stood and talked to him for 30 minutes. And the guy says, "Look at my house, it's a dump, literally. And the house next door is empty. I just got my property tax and they raised it $900. I haven't done anything to my house." People like that want some sort of justification, and we have to be able to give it to them. Another guy that lives out kind of behind the old Sears Target Center, he said, "I got my bill and it went up this amount." And he said, "I'd like the city to come and show me where did that $1,200 go, because I haven't done anything to my house. I haven't painted it. I haven't done siding. It looks the same." And so I think that's with our declining population, and that's another big arena that I like to address, and I think that I can help with that. If we don't start to grow Mason City, we are in big trouble. We are not just stagnant, we're in full force reverse. My husband graduated in 71, I graduated in 80. Tom graduated with 539 kids from Mason City High School. That's the largest class ever. We can do it again. We just need to be proactive. My husband and I try to do economic development between the two of us, and we're successful at it. And we've been talking to Brent Trout about how we've been doing it. In the last 2 years, we brought 3 businesses to Mason City and Clear Lake that a lot of people don't know about. The largest one is Egg Data. Egg Data we placed in our Napa empty offices. They are the largest agriculture software company in the world. They do crop and animal software data. That is huge. The second business that we just brought 1st of June is Capital Warehousing. We put them out at our building out at the Mason City Airport. Capital Warehousing is a huge warehouse firm. They warehouse everything, even the United States Postal Mail. The trucks go in and out of there every night. They love the Interstate 35 access. And the third business we brought was Kevin Paul over from Spirit Lake. He runs a bait and tackle shop and also does a fishing show. So I'm thinking if Tom and I can do it. Tom and I also build Goodwills up in Minneapolis and St. Paul. We build those with large leases. That's something that we feel passionate about, charity organizations, and we've always done well in property development, and that's something that we continue to do. So I know it can be done, we just need to do it on a larger positive scale together, and I think we can really begin to see some changes. Like Ankeny is an hour and 40 minutes away. They have the biggest boom that they've ever experienced. They're the 5th largest growing city in the country, and we are not even getting a trickle of that, and that to me is really disappointing and disheartening. I would like to get down to Des Moines to find out why. Our governor is from Lake Mills, and we are forgotten about up here. And I'm really tired of driving on the same crappy state highways that Tom and I drove on when we first got our driver's license. You go down to Des Moines and Ankeny, they have great smooth roads. You go to Iowa City, so we have this invisible line where the money stops and goes this way and that way. They're not utilizing us by the Minnesota border. And so that's another reason why I would like to get down to Des Moines to say, why are you forgetting North Iowa?
So, how can we recruit businesses
Mm-hmm.
to Mason City?
Okay.
And what do we need to
Yeah.
recruit businesses? What is going to entice a business to move to Mason
Okay, well, if you guys remember when Gateway Computers came to Iowa with the black and white computer boxes, they didn't last long in Iowa, did they? They moved across the border to South Dakota. They could not sustain the high business tax. They went over to South Dakota. Iowa is 12% business tax. Pennsylvania and New Jersey are 9.3 and 9%, second and third. If you were a business owner and you had 50 states to choose from with oceans, mountains, and climate, why would you come to Iowa and pay the highest business tax rate? That has to change. We as a party talk about we need to be more business friendly. We as a state say it all the time, but nobody lowers the business tax rate. That's not helping us, that is really hurting us. So what do they do when it even happens local? Well, come here and we'll give you a check, we'll give you some money to start. Well, that only helps for short term. When they get a taste of that high business tax rate and their profits are not at a point where they can handle it, they're going to move. Minnesota, I don't know if you guys go up to Minneapolis, they know what they're doing up there.
Well,
They're attracting.
Every other state in the country is doing it,
Right.
They're buying business.
Right. Yeah.
And that's fine. It's fine.
So we
Those are
really have to
revenues.
put our money where our mouth is, and we have to address what's not working. It seems like we keep electing officials. They go down to Des Moines, and it's the same 3 issues they talk about. Everyone is for education. Not one of us in this room is not for education. We all are. And when 39.74% of your property taxes go to education, and 70 cents of every new revenue dollar went to education in the 2016 session for next year. That left 23 cents of every new revenue dollar. Guess what that gets to cover? Everything. So they've decided that the deputy sheriffs that are retiring, they're not going to rehire. So we shouldn't suffer on other departments, law enforcement, corrections. They can't hire anybody. That's huge. 77 cents of every new revenue dollar went to education, leaving only 23 cents of every new revenue dollar for everything else. So,
What are the other 2 issues? Education.
I'm sorry, what?
You said there were three different issues that
Yeah,
come up all the time.
yeah, so they always go down there and talk about education, the business, and the environment. Those, to me, are like the redundant 3 that everybody wants to do talking points, but nothing is really done about it. And it's just frustrating, sending the same people back. They go down there, they're in session, and also as a party and a state, I don't care what party you're from, if you know that you're going to Des Moines and you're elected official and education funding is on the agenda, which it is every session, keep it as number 1, deal with it, figure it out, and then move on to the second one. That's the one that they all butt heads and they fight about all the time. The Democrats want 4% and we say this percent, and then they keep going back and forth and wasting month after month after month. It has to be sustainable. 4% isn't even an amount that we can even talk about. So I don't know why they started that amount. So first of all, they've got to keep it on the agenda. I know that 2 years ago they had a lot of farmers that were elected as state reps, and they were mad because, remember, they were still in session in May, and the farmers were mad because they wanted to get in the fields. Well, then what happens? Then they quickly do it. Do it when you're all fresh in January, you're all passionate about it, figure it out, and get it done. This is what we want. I get frustrated as a citizen watching it happen session after session, and it's always education that they're arguing about. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, we need to work better on education. It shouldn't be my way, your way. Everybody wants brownie points for education, and you know, you can keep throwing more money at it, but it is not helping the kids. I was really humbled when I got a lot of phone calls from teachers this summer. I had lunch with 8 teachers, some retired, some still in the system. And they said, Barb, even though she's a retired educator, she is not our voice. And I'm not going to name names who they were. The one teacher said, my salary's fine. I am not complaining about my salary. It's fine. And I don't know if you've seen the salaries that came out, but what other company in Mason City has a payroll that big? That is a huge payroll. I'm sorry. That is huge. The courses are getting cut. So is it really about the kids or not? Because we can all go down to Des Moines and ask for more money. It's how we're spending it, and we need to let the local school boards have more control. They know better of what works and what doesn't work. We're not the same as a big Des Moines high school. Mason City High School is shrinking. So our board might have some other ways to spend our money more effectively than just across the board that they're told to spend it.
Well, last question. Painless so far? Painless so far?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Pretend we're undecided voters. Tell us why we should vote for you.
Oh, okay. Because this state rep position is not about me. It's about the 30,000 citizens that I'll be representing in Mason City and Rockwell. People ask me, you know, Barb, you don't have to do this. Why are you doing it? And I say, I do have to do it. This is my hometown. I was born here. I'll die here. I don't have a second home anywhere. Tom and I love Mason City. This is where our family and friends are. We need a stronger voice. We need to be positive. We can get a lot more done if we work across the aisles and work with each other. If we can do it locally, why can't we do it more on the state level? But, you know, I don't want to do this long term. You have had no choice since 2010 on the ballot box. I think it's time that you have a choice. I think that I am ready. I have served as the Republican chair for 2 years. I've hosted every presidential candidate in Mason City in the last year and a half, except for John Kasich, and I was invited to have dinner with him in Washington, D.C., so I got to sit down and meet him. I treat people with respect. I expect to be treated with respect. We need to be kind to one another. We all need to remember we live in the same community, and we all have the same goals and passion in mind. It can be really easy to be negative, really easy. It takes a little bit more to bite your tongue and to be positive, and I think we can do it. I think that you deserve a state representative that will go down there and vote. Vote for the citizens, not vote for a union. Vote for growth and growing Mason City. Again, my husband and I have a big background in business owners. I sold health care insurance, long-term care insurance. I've been in the financial services field. I've done property development. I worked for Les Nelson at one time, leased some properties for him. So I think I'm really well-rounded. I do not have a college education, and I don't think that should define us. I am really outspoken on the trades, and that is something that we have to bring back to our schools, our high schools. We have 650 job openings in North Iowa, and we cannot fill them because we don't have kids that have skills in the trade jobs. If we do that, if we teach our kids that it's okay to work with your hands, you're not defined by a big debt and a college degree, although that's a great thing. My son went to Iowa and my daughter's going for her master's degree. My folks didn't have money. I didn't have the opportunity. Tom's folks didn't have the money. Very poor background. So if kids don't have that opportunity, we should not shame them that their friends get to go to college and you don't. We need to let them know that you can work with your hands and be productive and make a good living from that. I hope that helps.
Anything else?
I have a question. You talked about the business tax rate, 12.9%.
12%.
12%.
Mhm.
And the 2 and 3 states are 9%. New Jersey.
9.3 and 9. Mhm.
So, what do you do with this tax?
Well, okay.
I mean, so where
Remember that Texas has, there's a representative in Texas that I kind of follow, and Rick Perry's a friend of mine, Governor Perry. If we were to lower our business tax rate, to bring it down, you're going to have some income, revenue, that you're not going to have in the next few years. You have to deal with that ahead of time. You're going to have to make some really hard decisions, but it's doable. We all know there's wasteful spending. I mean, it goes on in every state. So your tough decision would be, what if we got it down to closer to the 9%? That's 3% that you're going to lose. What if they did 1% to start, and then maybe the next year, maybe it would be a gradual. That would probably be a little bit better for them to handle.
but you're still not competitive.
You're still not competitive immediately, but at least you are reducing that so that businesses know this is the rate that you're going to get down to after 2 or 3 years. If you at least gave them that incentive, and they were having some problems with their profits, maybe they would say, we're not going to move, they are lowering it, that's going to help our bottom line. So if you're really upfront and we discuss it in the next session, and they actually put their money where their mouth is and they do lower it, I think you're going to see some growth come to Mason City, because you've got Minnesota, they've got growth. They're running out of space. I mean, you go downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul, I mean, those suburbs are really spreading out. My son is a senior pricing analyst for Ameripride up there. Loves his job, loves where he lives. He wishes he could come back here to work, be a senior pricing analyst in a big company. It's doable. We can get there. We just have to get busy, send the right people to get it done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't even have to look at my notes. I do have my endorsements that I got if you wanted a list of my endorsements.